Look at Bogo. He's sitting in a comfortable cage, staring at the calendar on his phone. 2 more days until payday. His heart rate is elevated. His cortisol is spiking. He's checking his bank account for the 4th time today, even though he knows exactly what's in there. $47.33. The number hasn't changed since this morning, but he keeps refreshing, just in case. Now watch what happens when the direct deposit finally hits. His pupils dilate. A wave of dopamine floods his nucleus accumbens. Relief, safety, survival. For exactly 14 days, Bogo feels secure. Then the cycle begins again. Here's the disturbing part. Bogo has a master's degree. He earns $72,000 a year. He lives in a decent apartment, drives a reliable car, and has never missed a rent payment. By every conventional metric, Bogo is winning. He is the middle class, the American dream personified. So why does a 2-day delay in his paycheck trigger the same physiological panic response as a gazelle being chased by a lion? Why does his amygdala scream threat when his employer's payroll system glitches? And here's the question that should terrify you. Why does Bogo feel zero anxiety about the fact that 100% of his income disappears if he stops showing up to a building for 8 hours a day? You think this is about budgeting. It's not. You think this is about savings. Wrong again. You think this is about the economy, inflation, or the cost of living. Adorable, but no. This is about variable interval reinforcement, and if you don't know what that is, congratulations, you're exactly where the system wants you. Let me explain what's happening to Bogo's brain. In behavioral psychology, there's a training mechanism called variable interval reinforcement. It's the most powerful conditioning tool ever discovered. Casinos use it, social media platforms use it, and your employer uses it. Here's how it works. You train an animal by giving it a reward at unpredictable intervals, not random, unpredictable. The animal knows the reward is coming, but it doesn't know exactly when. This creates a state of chronic anticipation. The animal becomes hyper-focused on the source of the reward. It stops hunting, it stops exploring, it just waits, and waits, and waits, and waits. Now look at Bogo again. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork, a deposit appears in his account. It's not variable, you say. It's fixed, bi-weekly. Predictable. But that's where you're wrong. The interval isn't the 2 weeks between paychecks. The interval is the 30 years between now and retirement. Bogo has been conditioned to believe that if he keeps showing up, keeps performing, keeps waiting, a massive reward is coming. A pension, a 401k, social security, freedom. The reward is always 30 years away, and every 2 weeks he gets a little treat to keep him in the cage. This is called domestication syndrome. It's a real evolutionary phenomenon. When you take a wild animal and put it in captivity, and you feed it on a regular schedule, something horrifying happens to its brain. The neural circuitry responsible for hunting atrophies. The amygdala, the part of the brain that scans for threats and opportunities, shrinks. The animal becomes docile, dependent, safe. Bogo isn't just being paid. Bogo is being domesticated. Let's go deeper. In the wild, a wolf hunts. It doesn't know when it will eat. It might go 3 days without food, then it takes down an elk and feasts. This unpredictability keeps its predatory instincts razor sharp. Its dopamine system is calibrated for the hunt, not the meal. The chase is the reward. Now put that wolf in a zoo. Feed it every day at 3 p.m. What happens? Within 6 months, the wolf stops hunting. It stops exploring. At 2:45, it sits by the feeding gate, waiting. If the zookeeper is late, the wolf doesn't go hunt. It panics. It paces. It whines. Sound familiar? Bogo used to have ideas. In college, he talked about starting a business. He sketched out plans for a coffee shop. He learned basic coding because he thought he could build an app. He had hunt instincts, but then he got his first real job. $48,000 a year, benefits, paid time off, direct deposit every 2 weeks. And his brain said, oh, I don't need to hunt anymore. The food comes automatically. 10 years later, Bogo doesn't have a side project. He doesn't have a business plan. He doesn't even have a hobby that could generate income. He has a salary, and the thought of losing it triggers a full-blown survival response. This is the brilliance of the paycheck system. It doesn't just pay you. It trains you to stop looking for other food sources. You become psychologically dependent on the feeding schedule. And the cruelest part, the schedule is just predictable enough to keep you calm, but just scarce enough to keep you obedient. Bogo will never quit his job, no matter how much he hates it, because quitting means starvation, not actual starvation, psychological starvation, the absence of the bi-weekly dopamine hit, the terror of uncertainty. Meanwhile, there's another version of Bogo. Let's call him Wild Bogo. Wild Bogo doesn't have a salary. He has 7 income streams: a rental property, a freelance consulting gig, an online course, dividend stocks, a YouTube channel, an Etsy store, royalties from an ebook he wrote 3 years ago. Wild Bogo doesn't know exactly how much money will hit his account this month. Could be 4,000, could be 9,000. But here's the key difference. Wild Bogo doesn't panic when one stream dries up because he's not dependent on a zookeeper. He's hunting. His amygdala is active, his dopamine system is engaged, his brain is wired for opportunity, not security. Domesticated Bogo and Wild Bogo have the exact same IQ. They went to the same schools, they have the same skills. The only difference is how their brains have been conditioned. One brain has been trained to wait for food, the other brain has been trained to hunt for food. And here's the part that should make you furious. The system didn't accidentally domesticate you, it did it on purpose. The modern employment model was designed in the early 20th century during the Industrial Revolution. Factory owners needed workers who would show up on time, follow orders, and not ask questions. They needed predictability, compliance, obedience. So they created the salary, the benefits package, the pension. They turned human beings into zoo animals, and it worked brilliantly. Bogo's grandfather was a farmer. He didn't have a salary, he had crops. Some years were good, some years were bad, but his brain never atrophied. He never forgot how to hunt. Bogo's father was a union factory worker. He had a salary, but he also had leverage. If the factory tried to cut his pay, 500 workers walked out. His brain was semi-domesticated. He still had some fight in him. But Bogo is third-generation captive. His brain has been so thoroughly conditioned by the paycheck cycle that the idea of irregular income feels like chaos, like death. So what's the solution? How do you reverse domestication syndrome? You rewild your brain. You expose yourself to variable income. You build one income stream that isn't tied to your time, just one. It doesn't have to replace your salary, it just has to exist. Because the moment you receive money from a source that isn't your employer, something magical happens. Your amygdala wakes up. Your dopamine system recalibrates. You remember that you are not a zoo animal. You are a hunter. Start small, sell something online, freelance on the weekends, create a digital product, buy one share of dividend-paying stock. The amount doesn't matter. The psychological shift does. Because here's the truth that no one tells you. Financial freedom isn't about having enough money to quit your job. Financial freedom is about having a brain that isn't enslaved by the need for a paycheck. Bogo will spend his entire life in that cage, staring at the calendar, waiting for the zookeeper. Not because he has to, but because his brain has been trained to believe that the cage is safety. You can't budget your way out of domestication syndrome. You can't save your way out. You have to hunt your way out. The question is, are you willing to leave the cage?